A few weeks ago, I was scrolling through Facebook and I stopped on a post about the term "okay boomer." I've been hearing a lot about it on social media. It sounds like some of you have heard about it. If you haven't, "okay boomer" is a slang phrase that's gone viral. I understand that it's intended as a funny or ironic way to call out or dismiss what they call out-of-touch or closed-minded opinions associated with the baby boomer generation and older generations in general. As an example that I have seen is an older person saying, "get off my grass," and a younger person saying, "okay boomer." This term recently crossed over from social media into mainstream television by being a question on last week's Jeopardy! Greatest of All Time tournament. Take a look.
A 2019 New York Times article says this two-word phrase marks the end of friendly generational relations. And
I get to say it to Alex. What is okay boomer?
thank you.
If some of you are hearing this for the first time and take offense, I totally get it. As a boomer, barely, but I am a boomer myself, I took offense to it too. But to be honest, I am not trying to start a battle because I'm a bad hip right now and I would not do well in any kind of physical altercation with younger folks. If this turns into a war, we boomers can pass secret notes in cursive that younger people will never be able to decipher. And younger folks can create a social media platform, but we can't figure it out. Now, I don't usually reply to things like this on social media because once I let go, it's really hard to stop me. But I must have been in my entry point mindset of peace, love, and understanding because I replied with these words. Just like we shouldn't judge people by the color of their skin, their religion, or sexual orientation, I don't think we should assume we know what people think, feel, and believe based on their age. Pretty good, right? I couldn't wait for the likes to pour in. Well, there were a few likes, but there were also a few very sarcastic comments of, "okay boomer," right back at me. In anger, I replied something to the effect of, "hey, I've got experience, and I actually made a path through my yard for the kids to get to school, and I have held down a job for the past 30 years, blah, 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 blah," and I immediately deleted it. Because I realized I was doing the same thing that they were doing. I was putting younger generations into a single category and judging them without knowing them at all. Of the 64 likes I received from strangers, I was making assumptions that those were all baby boomers and older generations that had my back. And the 17 negative comments were people of younger generations passing judgment. When I stopped to think about it, some of those 64 likes may well have been like-minded millennials, or Gen X, or Gen Zs. As humans, we do this a lot. We don't have complete information about a person or situation, so we make assumptions about people based on what they wear, where they live, what kind of car they drive, in addition to skin color, religion, age, sexual orientation, and other things that actually make us unique and wonderful children of God. In an article by Sarah Glick in Thrive Global, she explains that the problem is that there is no way that we can really know and understand people based on that information. We tend to fill in the blanks with our interpretation of what we see or hear based on our own past experience and experiences others have shared with us. Simon Sinek, in his book Start With Why, tells this story. It's a cold January day. A 43-year-old man was sworn in as the chief executive of his country. By his side stood his predecessor, a famous general who, 15 years earlier, had commanded his nation's armed forces in a war that resulted in the defeat of Germany. The young leader was raised in the Roman Catholic faith. He spent the next 5 hours watching parades in his honor and stayed up late celebrating until 3 o'clock in the morning. You know who I'm describing, right? If you said John F. Kennedy, you'd be correct. However, you would also be correct if I said Adolf Hitler. Sinek goes on to say, the point is we make assumptions. We make assumptions about the world around us based on sometimes incomplete or false information. In this case, the information I offered was incomplete. If I would have shared that the year was 1933, it would have given you more information. Cynic says this is important because our behavior is affected by our assumptions or our perceived truths. We make decisions based on what we think we know. Now, there is some value in this ability to assess people or a situation quickly. To assess if we're safe or in danger. This likely came in handy when we were a more primitive species, always on the lookout for velociraptors and saber-toothed tigers. And it might still come in handy in a dark alley. But our problem is that we don't need to use that skill as much as we do. In the book, The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, an entire chapter is dedicated to bringing awareness to our tendencies to make assumptions. This chapter is fittingly called Don't Make Assumptions. Here's a snippet from that chapter. We have the tendency to make assumptions about everything. The problem with making assumptions is that we believe that they are the truth. We could swear they are real. We make assumptions about what others are doing or thinking. We take it personally. Then we blame them and react by sending emotional poison with our word. That is why whenever we make assumptions, we're asking for problems. We make an assumption, we misunderstand, we take it personally, and we end up creating a whole big drama for nothing. Ruiz goes on to explain, because we are afraid to ask for clarification, we make assumptions. Then we defend our assumptions and try to make someone else wrong. And with our unwillingness to ask questions, you need to actually complete the information. You tend to fill in the blanks yourself. Now, something funny and enlightening happened to me recently. I had laryngitis, and I had to go to Best Buy to pick up a gift that my brother had ordered. The only sounds that I could get out resembled the voice of a Wookiee. So instead of talking, I wrote my name and the details on a piece of paper before going into the store. When it was my turn, the gentleman working the counter read my note, and I could see him fumble around a bit. I could tell something was wrong with the order, and he did not know how to tell me. Then he said, very loud and very slow, "Can you hear?" So I was trying really hard not to laugh. So I shook my head yes, and he explained to me verbally that my order was actually at a different Best Buy. I signed him thank you just to keep the charade going. I found it funny, but it was also a great reminder of how much we make assumptions based on a little bit of information. To his credit, he did ask a question very loudly to get additional information. Let's take a picture on this screen. Take a look at the picture on the screen. What do you see? If you're like most people, you see a picture of a dog, a cat, and a rabbit. But I want you to look a little bit closer. If you look closely, you will see a baby on the left. You'll see faces that actually create the image. If you can't see that, we're going to pull it up at the very end after the service because it's really, really interesting how you can see the faces in there. And when you do zoom in, you see something different. And that's how life is. When you zoom in on people's lives, you really start to understand who they really are. One of my favorite thought leaders, Brené Brown, says that without having a complete understanding, we make up the story in our head. We simply jump to conclusions that are wrong. She has a suggestion to help us understand others and enhance our relationships. Basically, it's a way of pausing and testing our assumptions. She shares that by confirming your understanding and saying, the story I'm making up, you're also saying, I want you to see me and understand me and hear me. And knowing what you really mean is more important to me than being right or self-protecting. With those 5 words, the story I'm making up, you check the narrative in your head. Unfortunately, I do make up stories in my head. When my kids were younger and late coming home, I would get mad at them. In reality, I had been so busy making up stories in my head about them lying in a ditch or out of gas on a deserted road, so by the time they got home, my relief looked more like anger toward them for allowing me to even create those images. If I could have an actual conversation with those who replied, "Okay, Boomer," to my Peace, Love, and Understanding post, I might say, the story I'm making up in my head is that you're dismissing what I'm saying because of my age. Is that correct? Then I might follow up with, help me understand why you think that. I just really like the idea of checking the narrative in your head with others to make sure that you can really see others clearly. And I think that 2020 is the perfect time to start doing that.